Hello, friends. Today we begin a heartfelt story. In the harsh winter of New Mexico, 1874, an Apache man named Doc hangs bound to a tree, left to die in the frozen wilderness. Meanwhile, Molly, a courageous army courier, rides through the blinding storm until fate leads her to him. From the moment she cuts those ropes, their lives are tied together in a journey through betrayal, danger, and loneliness, toward one last spark of warmth in a cold and merciless world. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these stories I share. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. It's always wonderful to know we have friends from all across the world. And now, let's begin our story. The wind had a voice that night, long, hollow, and full of ghosts. It swept down from the Sierra Blanca peaks, across the white wasteland, carrying needles of ice that bit through wool and skin alike. Every living thing had vanished into burrows or barns, save for a single rider pushing against the storm. Molly Keene leaned low in her saddle, eyes squinting through the blur of snow. Her horse, a chestnut mare gone pale with frost, stumbled on the frozen trail. Behind her, faint but certain, came the echo of pursuit men shouting, a shot cracking, then nothing but the wind again. Molly wasn't just any mail carrier. Beneath her saddlebag, wrapped in oilskin, lay a set of coded dispatches bound for Fort Stanton letters that could expose half the rebel sympathizers scattered across New Mexico territory. She'd carried messages through sandstorms, floodplains, and Indian country, but never through a night like this. The trail forked near the timberline, one path leading toward open ground, the other vanishing into black forest. Molly took the forest, trusting darkness more than distance. Her mare's hooves sank deep in drifts of snow as she pressed on. It was then she saw it, a shape against the white, dark, and still. At first she thought it was a dead elk. Then the wind shifted, and she saw the man. He was tied to an oak tree, arms stretched high, ropes cutting deep into wrists already raw and bleeding. His chest was bare to the cold, marked with lashes that had frozen into dark, glossy streaks. The tree's bark was slick with his blood, and beneath him, snow had turned to crimson mud. Molly's breath caught in her throat. The man raised his head, and through half-shut eyes she saw the deep bronze of Apache skin, the high-cut cheekbones, the cracked lips moving faintly. "Please." His voice was barely wind. "Cut me loose. Can't breathe." Molly hesitated, glancing around the tree line. Whoever had left him here might still be near. But the man's knees buckled, his weight pulling against the ropes, and something in her, the same stubborn streak that had kept her alive through years of war and wilderness, made the choice for her. She swung off her horse, boots sinking into snow, and drew her knife. "Hold still," she said. He didn't answer. The ropes were stiff with ice, but the knife's edge found purchase. One by one, the cords snapped. When the last gave way, the man crumpled forward like a felled log, hitting the snow with a muffled grunt. Molly knelt beside him. His breath came in shallow bursts, vapor curling from his lips. The cold was killing him faster than blood loss. She tore off her outer coat and draped it over his shoulders. "Stay with me," she murmured. "Don't you quit now." His eyelids fluttered, then stilled. She pulled a pouch from her saddlebag, dried herbs, torn linen, a flask of whiskey. Her hands worked quickly, grinding leaves, pressing them to the wounds. The scent of sage and iron mixed in the air. She poured whiskey over a gash along his ribs. He jerked, gasping, but didn't open his eyes. "Good," she said softly. "Means you're still here." The blizzard screamed around them. Her horse shivered, stamping the ground. Molly knew they couldn't stay exposed much longer. Through the curtain of snow, she spotted a faint glimmer lantern light, maybe a mile ahead. She heaved the man upright. He was heavy, near 200 pounds of dead weight, but she managed to sling him across the saddle, then climbed up behind him. "Hang on, stranger," she said through clenched teeth. "We're not dying out here." The mare trudged on, hooves crunching over ice and stone. Every gust threatened to push them off the path. Molly's fingers had gone numb, her jaw locked tight against the cold. At last, through the swirl of white, a shape emerged, a squat log cabin half buried in snow, smoke trailing weakly from its chimney. She pounded on the door with her fist. "Hello? Anybody home?" After a moment, a lantern flared inside. The door creaked open, revealing an old man wrapped in a threadbare blanket. His beard was white, his eyes pale as milk. "Hell you bangin' for?" he rasped. "Ain't fit weather for company." "Please," Molly said. "This man's half dead. I need shelter." The old man squinted past her at the limp figure over the horse. "Apache, ain't he?" "Yes," she said. "And he'll be a corpse if I don't get him inside." The man hesitated, then stepped back. "Bring him in then. Storm'll kill us all if we stand jawin'." She dragged Doc. She still didn't know his name, but that's what she'd call him later through the doorway, laying him near the hearth. The warmth hit her like a wave. The cabin smelled of smoke, salt pork, and loneliness. The old man Henta Rowe, as she'd learned come morning, stoked the fire higher. "Got stew on the stove," he said. "Ain't much, but it's warm." Molly worked by firelight, cutting away the blood-crusted shirt, cleaning each wound as best she could. Henta watched, his eyes unreadable. "He one of them raiders?" he asked finally. "No," she said. "He's a man left to die. That's all I need to know tonight." Henta grunted. "Suit yourself." By the time she finished, the Apache's breathing had steadied, a slow rhythm against the crackle of logs. Molly leaned back, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. "Name's Molly," she said quietly, not expecting a reply. "You hang on, you hear? You'll tell me yours when you wake." Outside, the storm raged, slamming against the walls like an angry sea. Henta shuffled to a chair, muttering to himself. "Ain't right bringin' his kind in here," he said. "But I ain't one to cross death's door neither." Molly ignored him. She sat near the hearth, coat still draped over the wounded man, eyes heavy from sleepless nights. The sound of wind faded to a dull hum, and for the first time in days, she let herself breathe. Somewhere beyond the mountains, the men chasing her were still riding rebels, bounty hunters, ghosts from a war that refused to die. But here, in the flickering firelight, she was safe. For now. She reached out, tucking the blanket higher over his shoulders. The Apache stirred, whispering something in his own tongue, soft, like a prayer. Molly listened, though she didn't understand a word. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just chance, the snow, the oak, the dying man. Something larger had steered her here. The flames danced across the walls, painting their shadows together. Outside, the storm carried on, wild, merciless, endless. But inside that small cabin, beneath the hiss of wind and fire, two lives had crossed paths, each owing the other a heartbeat. And the night went on. Morning came slow and colorless, a thin gray light seeping through the cracks between the logs. The storm had passed, but snow still clung to every pine branch, bending them like old men at prayer. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned down to embers. Molly woke stiff and cold, her back pressed against the wall. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she saw the figure by the hearth. The Apache lay wrapped in a wool blanket, his chest rising and falling steady now. The angry red lines across his torso had darkened, but they no longer bled. Old Henta Rowe was at the stove, stirring something in a blackened pot. The smell of coffee and boiled oats filled the room. "You sleep like a stone," he muttered without looking up. "Feels that way," Molly said, rubbing her eyes. "How long's it been daylight?" "Couple hours. Storm quit near dawn. You best eat while it's hot." She took the tin cup he handed her, sipping the bitter coffee that scalded her throat in the best way. Her hands still shook a little from the cold, or from the thought of the men who might still be hunting her. The old man eyed the sleeping Apache. "He's tougher'n he looks. Thought he'd be gone by morning, but I'll be damned he's still breathing." Molly set her cup down. "He'll pull through if he rests. The body's stubborn that way." Henta snorted. "Maybe so. But you brung trouble to my doorstep, girl. Nothing good comes from mixin' with his kind." She looked up sharply. "His kind saved more white soldiers than you'll ever know. You think he tied himself to that tree for fun?" The old man shrugged, turning back to the pot. "I ain't judgin'. Just tellin' you what folks believe out here." She bit back the retort on her tongue. Arguing wouldn't change a lifetime of frontier suspicion. Instead, she moved to check the Apache's wounds again, pulling the blanket aside. His skin was warm now, the fever receding. When she touched his wrist to feel his pulse, his eyes snapped open. They were a deep brown, sharp and alert. He stared at her hand, then at her face, uncertain if she was real. "You're awake," she said softly. He didn't answer right away. His voice came rough as gravel. "Where is this place?" "Cabin north of Fort Stanton," she said. "Storm's over. You're safe." He tried to sit up, wincing as pain crossed his face. Molly steadied him with a hand. "Easy. You were nearly frozen solid." He looked around the wooden walls, the iron stove, the old man glaring from the corner, then back to her. "Why did you cut me down?" Molly hesitated. The truth was simple enough, though it felt strange to say aloud. "Because you asked me to, and I couldn't ride away from someone dying." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once, not gratitude exactly, but acknowledgement. "I am called Doc," he said finally. "Short for something my tongue can't make in your language." "Molly," she replied. "Molly Keene." He inclined his head. "Then, Molly Keene, I owe you a debt." "You don't owe me a thing," she said, smiling faintly. "Just heal." Henta cleared his